you agree that like what's it called? Like the main reason for the red green alliance is the fact that like the red see the green as essentially being like the strongest other force out there to like deal with the American led Western world order, right?
Yeah, yes. Mutual enemy being the Western world order, so that's why they unite with each other. They work with each other.
Do
Okay,
you
yes.
think that means that like if the green part of this alliance gets like severely weakened, the red part won't want to align with the green part anymore?
Severely weakened.
You know, like Islamic Republic gets taken out and you know, we keep going, a lot of reform like and just yeah.
I mean, the problem with the green part, the Islamic part, is not just the Islamic Republic; is the entire global ummah. I mean, we are talking about
A lot of people and
citizens.
a lot
Yeah, we're talking about millions and millions of people across more than 50 countries, which that's a lot of people to gi- give up on as
Mhm.
part of your army. You have they have the numbers. They're also more violent, more barbaric on average. Something that is very useful, for them when it comes, using the barbarians, like open the doors to the barbarians at the gate. Okay, so even without the Islamic Republic, if I was a leftist trying to bring down the Western Western world order, these are people I would try to open the door to these people, open the floodgates for these people to come in. Even without the Islamic Republic, these people would vote against the stability of the West. So they are still very useful when it comes to demographic engineering. Promise them free. Like this is a perfect match between communism and politics, because or basically leftist policies in general, because it involves offering people a lot of free stuff, taking from the rich, giving to the poor. So you promise people to come here, we will take the stuff from the rich, give it to you for free. A lot of health income when it comes to healthcare, education, benefits, free free housing and everything like that. So you come from whatever shithole you're in, you come here, we pay for stuff, and you vote for more of this. You vote for the people who made this all possible for you. This is why the combination of leftist policies, welfare economics, and open borders works very well together for these destructive forces, because the same people who gave you the people who gave you all of this free stuff, they now expect you to vote for them, to reward them with giving you this free stuff, and then they will use that political power to open the floodgates even wider. And these people vote differently, right? These people don't have the classical liberal values that has made Western powers the great countries that they are. So they will come in and they will vote in more in line with their values, and slowly basically erode the the world order from within. That's the plan. If so, given that both communists and Muslims try to defeat Western powers with their militaries, and they failed. Liberal order, world liberal powers defeated both communist and Islamic power. Absolutely in war, right? The Muslim world in the First World War, they lost their caliphate. Ever that has been very humiliating for Islam not to have a caliphate. And after the Cold War, the communists were severely defeated. So now they're playing a different game. Instead of trying to defeat the Western powers militarily at their borders, they just come straight for their capitals, and they use their tolerance and the democracy that they have to just basically, instead of using bullets to take down these empires, they're using ballots to take down these empires. So the combination of tolerance and democracy, he's given them a window of opportunity to come, just instead of trying to defeat the armies of Western powers, they become more influential in their politics, so that they have influence over these armies and the police, and so they become part of it. Instead of defeating it, you'd actually take control over them, at least to some extent, by becoming part of the politics.
But like what do you think that is the best way to get the like red green alliance to like turn against each other?
As long as they share the same enemy, I mean, even if you turn them against each other, eventually, because the greatest obstacle in their way is the world liberal order, that fight against each other, it would be temporary. Like they might sometimes disagree with each other over gay stuff, over some other stuff. I mean, Jew hatred, for example, will unite them a lot. But more importantly, is just trying to destroy. Like at the end of the day, their main enemy is the current world order. This is what they share, because unlike Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism, Islam is a world order, right? It's not just a spiritual religion, it's a world order. Communism is also a world order. And that's why, given that they're world orders, the main thing they need to do is to take down the current world order. And that is the main obstacle in their way. So, whatever small disagreements they have, even if they fight against each other, it will be temporary. And then eventually they will get back in, you know, back on the same page, united against the same enemy. The best way to fight against it is to find a way to advertise for classical liberal values, and that's what we're doing here. That's why this whole group here is called, is called liberty. Like we named it after, what we're fighting for. But we need to, basically, we need to create an army of, especially young, we need to recruit even more younger people, make them more pro-American, pro-Israeli, anti-Islam, and sorry to say, something, also anti-communism. That's the solution. To convince, I know you disagree with that, but just let me say that we need to convince more of the younger generation that it's worth fighting for the current liberal order by demonstrating how beneficial it has been to all of us. That's what we need to do.
All right, we have some responses for this. Olga, you're next. And keep in mind, we're keeping the responses to 2 minutes maximum.
Thank you. For this part of Green Red Alliance, I just want to mention that there are historical roots through the 20th century to this alliance. Like, even if we think about it more deeply, the green part is a sort of golem which was created by the red part and a little bit went out of control. Since there are historical roots and the green part, like the Islamic world, was merely abused to become an enemy of the West by the communists and became a bitter enemy of the West. I don't, me personally, I don't see how this alliance becomes against the one part to another. Like the probability of turning the red part, which some people, I don't know why, consider them as a better part or more, enlightenment part. This part consists of people like was built like by people like Stalin, and to turn it against the green part, it's simply turning against the historical roots of this alliance, which are very deep. The only way to deal with this alliance is to show people around the world that there is a better way to live. And prosperity doesn't come with violence taken from the communists or from the Islamists. As simple as that.
Okay, I just want to quickly just add something really quickly. The green was not, Islamic world was not turned against the West by communists. If I heard that right, maybe I heard that wrong. It's very foundational within Islam to be against the un-Islamic world. So they have that. It's part of their DNA.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you for the correction. I meant that
Yeah.
it was more abusing these sentiments. But
Yeah.
Next,
the driving force was it was very much done by the KGB and the red part.
Okay.
all right,
Okay. I'm not going to respond to that. Yeah. Let's go.
next response is Guy.
So unfortunately, Samantha, I don't think like the only way to stop the alliance is for Islam to take over, and then the communists will find out that they were wrong, because an inherent part of both ideologies marry each other. Islam has this idea that it's going to use whatever it takes to expand, and communism has this idea as part of its material analysis that at the end of the day, Islamism is a material problem and can be solved with material solutions, namely the redistribution of resources. And so if Islam becomes weaker, it's a matter of ideology in that communism would wants to prove itself by importing people from other parts of the world and giving them money and showing that that reforms them and makes them good participants in society. It's not working, but as an ideology, it can't not work because that's the foundation on which communism is built. And so it's either abandon communism, reform communism, meaning do something that's more for more equality in terms of economics, but not as far as the underlying ontological principle, or let Islam take over.
That is very interesting. Thank you, Guy.
Next response to this is Danny.
Yes, so when you're getting into alliance with any group, you should ask yourself two questions. One, to what extent are our interests aligned? And two, how much will the power of the other group help you achieve your goals? And then you can assess whether the sacrifice in question one is worth the benefit in question two. So when it comes to the Red-Green Alliance, as Armin said, both groups completely agree on dismantling the Western world order, and their disagreement is mostly on what happens after. So that's why you saw the alliance break apart after the 1979 revolution. So what you originally asked, Samantha, if a great reduction of the Greens' power would break this alliance, I think the group's goals are so aligned that it wouldn't make a difference. These minor sources of disagreement, like whether we should be throwing gays off of roofs, I think they're not important to the red part of the alliance, and this interest is mostly performative on their part.
I also want to add, when it comes to what comes after, I think the Muslims make more sense than the communists because they at least have something to point to as it working out. There's not a single example like that the communists could point to for a
China.
working model of what. Samantha, we have corrected you many times on this. China is state capitalism, and you figured it out, and you were shocked by the fact that China is state capitalism. I don't know why you keep using China as an example of this working. China became rich. We had an explosion in their economy once they liberated their economy somewhat. You were the one who was shocked about the fact that we have markets. We have stock market. Shanghai stock market is competing with Singapore as the financial center of the Far East. How is that communism?
I don't believe the Shanghai stock market exists.
So you don't believe that? Have you looked it up? Okay, so what makes you think that? Wait, here. So what if
Oh,
I
I'm
showed it
scared.
to
I don't
you?
want to see it. No, I'm scared.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Right.
Rebecca wanted to respond to this as well. Rebecca, are you there?
Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
I don't have audio. Can you hear her?
I don't have idea either. Nope.
He's speaking though. Oh, no.
No idea.
Samantha, you also had a 2 while Rebecca is taking care of her audio. Did you want to say anything else?
Yeah. Do you think it's possible that, let's say, in a futuristic world where the world has fallen to the Red Green Alliance, shit goes horribly wrong, and now we're living in this post Red Green Alliance futuristic world? Do you think it's possible that one side could convince people hey, the problem we with last time was we had this fucked up alliance. If we do this now without making this alliance, just our side does this. Do you think that idea?
I think if the world is taken over by Islamists and communists, I'm going to root for the Islamists. I'm going to root for the Muslims because I think the world would be so much shittier if the communist wins over the Muslim. If I had to choose between Muslims ruling the world and communists ruling the world, I would pick Muslims ruling the world 10 times out of 10. 10 times. And I say this as one of the most aggressive anti-Islamic activists in the world. So, but
I actually agree with
yeah,
you because being born
yeah.
and raised in Iran, and I went to Cuba 3-4 months ago. Yeah, I'd rather go back to Iran.
So it's here's the thing: when you live under an Islamic tyranny, okay, that means you have no free speech. That means your freedoms are limited. But your fridge still might be somewhat full. Okay, you have no freedom. Women are being oppressed. The people are being beaten up. We having people's heads being chopped off because they were blasphemed. But there's still a market. There's still some trade. People have normal jobs. There's ways to earn a living as a way not to starve to death. But if communism takes over the world, the millions of people who will die from starvation, that would be more devastating than Islamic rule. Like it would be 1,000 times worse. This is why,
You
at
guys,
least, yeah.
you
Oh,
got.
there we go.
I mean, no. I mean, but I think you are underestimating Islam. But I actually wanted to say a
I'm
couple of
not.
things that.
No, wait, Rebecca. I wasn't even finished talking. But no, I do. Like,
Okay,
if
okay.
anybody, if no, but let me just say this. Like, let me respond
No,
to
I
you.
hear you.
As an ex-Muslim, I'm pretty sure I understand Islam. And when I say communism is worse, that is not me underestimating Islam. I've studied Islam for decades, and I understand Islam's destructive ability more than
Um,
most people. I just understand but here's the thing. I've studied Islam a lot, but I also studied economy a lot. Okay. Me saying communism is worse is not an endorsement of Islam, is not me underestimating the destructive capacity of Islam. That is just me understanding even more the destructive ability of communism. So don't ever think I'm underestimating how destructive Islam is. I know it, and I lived it. Unlike most people that have only studied it, I also lived under it.
well, okay. So let me just say, first of all, like
Yeah, it's your turn
Cuba.
anyway, Rebecca. So you can
Yeah,
take
yeah,
that
yeah.
as your response.
Cuba had communism 20 years more than Iran was taken over by the Islamic regime. So it's just a matter of time. Anyway, it's like in 20 years, the Islamic regime would make Cuba look like a paradise. And besides that, like, actually, the funny thing I wanted to say, first of all, it's the same communism and Islam, because I wanted to say that the difference between communism and Islam is that communism is what happens when the Mongols take Islam as their religion, because they continued eating pork, they continued drinking, and they continued doing whatever they wanted to. They just accepted, like, that's communism. And everything that's communism, the IRGC also implemented. They nationalized supermarkets, they took over all the infrastructures, they operate in the same, like, they have the same subsidies, they have the same economic structure exactly like communism does. So like, I checked the Iranian economic system. It's exactly the same as it was under communistic Russia. And you say, like, yeah, people could go to work in Russia as well. People earned money. People went and had like like their own local enterprises. They own, like, they could do that. They could do all those things. It's like, it's not true that you cannot do this under communism. It still exists. So when I look at the structure properly, it's the same structure. It's the same structure. Just one is also enforcing like discrimination against women, and the other one is more equal in its gender, like application of torture.
Okay, so this is because of the misunderstanding of the Islamic Republic and IRGC. So let me educate you on what's happening in the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is not purely Islamic. The Islamic Republic is Islamic and communist. This is the reason why you're noticing the command economy within the Islamic Republic, because the 1979 Islamic Revolution was not actually an Islamic revolution. It was a leftist Islamic revolution. It's true that the Islamists massacred and got rid of the communists after the Islamic Revolution succeeded. However, they took a lot of their ideas. They took a lot of their ideas, especially their economic ideas, into having centralized command economy policy, isolationist central economy. And I think that as the Islamic republics curse upon the Iranian people, it's not only because they're Islamic. In fact, it's mostly because of what they inherited from the communists. I think the fact that we have so many Islamic countries in the world, but the suffering of the Iranian people is more than other Islamic countries, is because our regime is not purely Islamic. Our regime, the regime that is ruling over us, is both Islamic and communistic. So that's why you're
What
seeing that's why you're seeing the command and communism. Let me actually say something about Cuba. I don't think like Cuba 100% represents what communism stands for. I think if you want to see the destructive ability of communism, look at the millions of people who died from starvation in Mao's, China, and Stalin's Soviet Union. So, and when you say like people still are able to work, yes, still people are able to work, but the starvation, it's not a normal functioning economy. The starvation that communism causes, if it's fully implemented, is maximum, is
it's
devastating. It
it's
destroys
it's
society from the very foundation. Like people are we are economic,
Armin,
we're
can
not
I
just
say
sort
something?
we're no, let me finish first, please.
Just it's
We're
just a
not just
sentence. It's just a
go on.
sentence. Because they both like because China, the communism that there is also a geography element that comes into it. And if you look
That's
further
not one
into
sentence.
looking
That's not one
just okay,
sentence.
so so geographically it's easier to kill millions in those areas of China and Russia,
I'm not
just the
talking
way it
about
is.
killing people. I'm not okay. So this is okay. Again, I'm gonna clarify. I'm not talking about the people who were violently killed by Mao or Stalin.
No,
Okay, I'm
I'm talking about
talking about
starvation.
the economic policies of communism starves people even more than communists kill people. Any form of centralized economic control kills people with poverty more than anybody could kill people with war, right? And this is the nature of communism, a centralized command economy, and that kills, that destroys prosperity, and poverty kills more than war. But anyways, I think we are
Okay, so
yeah, yeah,
okay, so but it's not true because there was a lot of starvation in the Middle East due to Islam as well. It's just not
yeah,
talked about. And like the Maronites, for example, in Lebanon during before the area of World War One, like hundreds of thousands died of starvation. And
yep.
in general, historically speaking, okay, China and Russia were always more susceptible to starvation due to geography related elements, and they have a cycle of hundred of millions dying from starvation, and like throughout millennia before
All right.
communism was invented.
L-
So it's
yeah,
not it's
no, no,
so
no, okay,
I'm
let me just
yeah.
okay, let me
Yeah.
just address this. Like, yes, obviously, any set of bad ideas, they also impact the economy, and because if economy doesn't grow as fast, it causes starvation and people die. I'm just talking about the level of it, right? Yes, have people died from starvation because of Islam, Islam impacting the economy? Of course, I know that happens, right? It happened in Iran. I'm just talking about the severity of it, and the mass starvation that I'm talking about is specifically as a result of communist policies. And again, this is independent from geography, because communism wherever is, Samantha, shaking your head and doing thumbs down doesn't make you right? So
I'm
let
listen,
me
I
make my point.
dislike
Hold on.
communism
Re-
with passion, but it has a lot to do with geography. And I can prove it to you case by
I know,
case if you want to, but
but
that's a very long
we're
conversation to have.
going in a circle, but I'm just saying, like, I
But the
know
bottom
obvious.
line is that they are
Rebecca,
both they
you
don't
have to
stop.
let me finish my point. You have to let me finish my point before you're coming. And we do have some rules here, like when it comes to putting ones and twos in the chat. So let me make my point. Of course,
Where's the moderator?
okay,
Yeah, we
can
have
I?
to move on.
Yeah.
So,
Listen, one last sentence. Of course,
okay,
everything
10
is
seconds.
multifactorial, but it has been proven beyond reasonable doubt the destructive force that communism is, academically, empirically, that it causes poverty more than anything else. It has been proven academically with empirical data beyond reasonable doubt. Of course, geography has an influence. Who says that it doesn't? Of course it does. But that factor is more destructive than anything else that you could imagine. Anyway.
All right, Daniel Dunn wants to respond to this. let's
I
move
want to
on to
respond.
what.
Like, I want to say one thing.
Okay,
Academia is
Rebecca,
fears Islamophobia more than it does
let's
anti-communism.
Rebecca,
Okay.
everybody here is following the
Now
rules except
continue.
you.
Let's
Everybody is
go.
putting ones and twos in the
Nobody.
chat.
I put it too. Put
Yeah,
it
but
Okay,
too.
now
yes.
you
So the
responded without
responses.
actually putting it too.
All
Yeah.
right, let's move on. I can add you back to the list if you like. Daniel, go ahead.
Hey, I didn't get to say anything.
Well, the core of communism is everyone gets what he deserves and gives what he can give. Now, who is to decide who deserves what? This is the main problem with all the communistic ideology. The other thing is if one of these two ideologies, which is Islam or communism, takes over the world, as I see it, we are going to back to caves and not having a futuristic world.
Right. Communism has a very specific definition, who gets to define, people understand what communism is, and the only part that you need to understand is that it's anti-liberty when it comes to the markets. That's the most important part of it, and it's a central, it's very clear that it has a central command structure, command economics, which is proven to be something that doesn't work empirically. And again, people who don't like it could keep shaking their heads and be like this, but again, this has empirically been proven not to work. That's all you need to know. Centralized command economy doesn't work. Liberalism in the market, giving people liberty to make decisions instead of having a centralized government make decisions for you with regards to prices, with regards to the amount of supplies, with regards to who gets to sell what, how much, who gets to work with. If you just let people do that themselves and we're pro, guys, are we pro freedom here? Right? Communism is anti-freedom. Communism means that we get to decide the prices, we get to decide who makes how much, we get to decide how much people get paid. This is something that is forced upon a society. The economic plans is forced upon a society from the higher ups. That is anti-liberty. That is anti-freedom. We know freedom works. Samantha, if you're shaking your head, make your point. Why? How is that not anti-liberty? Communism is centralized command economics, means that the government, the central authority, decides. That is anti-liberty. That is not a free market.
Okay,
So if
guys,
you,
next.
yeah, okay, guys.
Okay, so a couple things. First, I would unfortunately choose to live under Islamism because Islamism has been proven to work for more than 3 generations, and communism hasn't. There's a lot of examples where it hasn't worked. I haven't seen one where it has in a way that I would want to live in. In Islam, at least, there's examples of that historically. Secondly, for why communism doesn't work, it's true empirically, but it's also true in theory because, in terms of information theory, you can't make centralized decision for a dynamical system, and you can't also predict the results of a change you make to a dynamical system effectively. And this is also related to a conversation we need to have with Armin once we get to in one of the VIP sessions about why I'm not a consequentialist, because predicting consequences of a dynamical system itself is a very shaky thing to do. And so the problem with communism is that you try to do a specific algorithmic calculation of something that by its very definition cannot be algorithmically calculated, which is the inner workings of a society.
So the way you're saying it is that what we have with the free market is a very complicated system that is just doing trial and error and collecting a lot of information that is from the wisdom of the crowd that no centralized authority will be able to gather, analyze, and make decisions based on. And
It's by definition incalculable.
And that's why you just let the system to basically do trial and error and figure out what works and what doesn't, instead of having some a centralized authority make decisions for the whole society.
Yes, you have to have parts of the system interact with each other, which gives you essentially the optimum result.
All right.
Yes. And
sorry, go ahead.
Just a short thing. Here's the reason why Islam causes poverty is because it somewhat middles with the economy. When it comes to, it has opinions regarding interest. It has opinions regarding what's economically halal or haram, right? So That's why Islam also causes poverty, because of the limited involvement it wants to have in the economy. Like, I can't imagine how an economy could prosper without having banking or interest, right? But when it comes to communism, that control over the economy is complete. Okay, it's like 100%. It's like everywhere. It's like we control everything, right? So as and I mean, because I think economically mostly, I think people's lives are economics. Like, our prosperity, our well-being is measured by economics, right? So this is why I think that communism is even more destructive than Islam, because it's it wants to, in the same way that Islam wants to control everything about our personal life, communism wants to control everything when it comes to the economy, and that level of control is so complete that it causes so much poverty.
All right, I'll be closing the main list in about a few minutes if anybody wants to add, because we don't have a lot of time and we have quite a few responses to this current topic as well. Olga, you're next, and keep in mind we're trying to keep the responses to 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you again. First, Guy, there is an option that centralized decision can control all the parts, though such way would be more susceptible to changes. Second one, I want to remind you all that RCG and Islamic Republic did not invent persecutions of their own people. Communist Stalin and the Communist Soviet Union preceded that in perhaps 50 years. And through these ages, there people were persecuted in Soviet Union before, fortunately or perhaps unfortunately, Iranian people knew what it is. And there is a similarity between the Russian people and the Iranian people in the way that both of these people didn't like what the regimes are doing for them and overthrew them. Eventually, I hope that current Iranian regime RCG will overthrow eventually as well. And for the economic part of that, we should remember that communism is very nice by stating that all people should have equal shares and all people should have what they need and that stuff. But that's very nice and that's true, and this is a very nice idea until it comes to that people who are closer to the plate get more and get a larger share. And this is also true for all communist systems, including, by the way, RCG. You can see a lot of their children living in Western countries and having very nice
Olga,
life
that's
while
two
people are
minutes.
suffering.
Jeffrey, you're next to respond to this for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so Armin brought up a couple of good points with regards to why communism and socialism fails. So they're both antithetical to the human condition, and it's very specific to those ideologies. It goes beyond just its centralization. Communism tends to treat or view societies kind of like blocks of coral, right? Rigid, uniform, and people are interchangeable and are not like, don't have their own personal advantages and other things, right? Socialism is the statist form of communism, and it kind of like views humans and human society like a hive mind insect, where the individuals are subordinated to the perceived needs of the state. The problem with that is that it treats people as interchangeable units rather than independent actors with unique knowledge, incentives, and preferences. Economic signals are very much filtered through their ideology at the cost of efficiency, and the feedback loops are weakened or distorted via that ideology, and that creates things like mass starvation. You can take a look at Mao's Great Leap Forward. So, I mean, it's not all forms of, you know, top down or centralized approaches are like this. They all still have to be, I mean, a lot of them have run afoul of that. Communism and socialism, singularly and uniquely, are horrific when it comes to that. Not the least of which is how alien it is to the human condition and how the base elements of the human condition then get manifested perversely, right? We're natural short term maximizers and free ride whenever possible, which means the demand on the system increases without incurring additional personal cost, and that crowds out investments in productivity, which is why neo-Marxists call that the crisis of advanced industrialism, or what neoliberal, as as Armin would define it, classical liberal would call overconsumption and decline.
So I just want to, the way I summarize all of this is that if you're pro liberty, you have to be anti Islam and you have to be anti communism if you're pro liberty, right? Because Islam is maximum limitation on your social and your political life, and communism is maximum limitation on your economic and political life, right? And if you're pro liberty in politics, social, and economy, then you have to be against both communism and Islam, right? And maybe if I'm saying that communism is even more destructive than Islam, even though I'm very aggressively anti Islam, is because I care so much about economic development and economic prosperity. And I think that communism is uniquely destructive when it comes to the economy.
All right, Peter, 2-minute respond. Go ahead.
So, could Islam be more dangerous than communism because it's theological, whereas communism, because it's not theological, communists would be more likely to compromise?
Well, I mean, the thing is that the theological element of it, you would think that because it's theological, you would think that it would have more marketing ability. But communism has proven to be very, very good at propaganda and marketing. Like it promises so much of the things that people love to hear. Equality, everybody, like a
Look up
better standard
Maoist
of living for the
self-critique
poor.
sessions or self-critique sessions or struggle sessions.
Mm. Wait, say what?
You've never heard like self-critique sessions or like struggle sessions from Maoism?
I have, but I also heard of the shaming sessions and
Or
people who will
yeah,
come and yeah,
yeah, that shit.
yeah. Yeah, people who would come and basically show how they betrayed the Communist Party and betrayed the communists, and also a lot of executions for whoever they put these hats on them and they come in front of a crowd and they basically explain why they have been retarded for disagreeing with
I will
communism.
say almost anything you have read about that stuff, I have personally witnessed in a cult.
So how do you still defend communism after experiencing all of that?
Because I was in a fucking cult where I will
Right.
be forever afraid to not, um
I understand. I understand. I understand. I understand. Well, I mean, you already have, okay, but yeah, I mean, you already have done more than most people when it comes to recovering from their brainwashing. So I understand. By the way, every time I say something that might be that makes you uncomfortable, like put something in the chat. Like you have to have a way to signal to me if you like maybe if I ever say something that is like getting giving you trauma over thing because of the experience that you had with your cult, just maybe I don't know, give me this emoji or whatever, like is this good, and I'll stop. Okay, give me that emoji if I ever say something that you like finding it not making you uncomfortable. Just use that emoji and I'll stop doing it, stop criticizing. But again, I just also want to congratulate you for being so willing to come in a crowd of a whole bunch of people who are anti-communist. I mean, you've been brainwashed in a cult, and now you're in a group of people who almost everybody here is anti-communism. So that is a level that takes courage. So
it's
good job.
because I don't believe good people exist anymore that I'm like, why not talk to her? Like, you know what? Even if you guys want to start
Or-
babies, it's like maybe the whole world wants to start babies. So why not talk to people who want to start babies? Because I don't fucking
right. Okay.
believe
Oh,
good people exist.
no, you don't think we're good people?
Good people don't exist.
Okay. Are you a good person?
I don't believe good people exist. So I think I'm better than most people.
Okay, do you think that we here, some of us are better than other people?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think
if
ultimately, like all people would be willing to have millions of people killed just to like, have a version of reality they want validated. So
Okay. Well, that's probably because of your that probably doesn't match objective reality and has more to do with the fact that you were in a cult and you had bad experiences, right? So it's possible that your negative view of the world is not really a representation of the world, but a representation of the fact that you're a victim of a cult.